Hello, and welcome back to Grave Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy whispers rising straight from the grave, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare. Relax your mind. Let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. Let me make something clear before I explain what happened. I do not mean the AI is just generating a woman in every image. I mean it is generating the same woman every time. The exact same woman. Every picture, every attempt, every device, every place I try to look. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like the kind of story people make up online because they want attention, or because they want to scare strangers for a few minutes before everyone scrolls away. I would show you the images if I could. I know that would make this easier to understand. A photo would explain more than I ever could. You would see her, and you would know why I have barely slept all week. But I cannot share the images. I have tried. I tried posting one on X 3 times. Each post was deleted almost instantly. I tried one post in a ChatGPT subreddit, one in a Mid-Journey subreddit, and another in a general AI art subreddit. All of them disappeared. No warning that made sense. No explanation that matched the content. I even tried sending one over Snapchat, which I will explain later, and that failed too. It is like anything that contains her cannot leave me. Every attempt ends the same way. The upload fails, the post vanishes, or the app behaves as if I never touched it. It does not matter what device I use. It does not matter what platform I try. If the woman is in the picture will not go through. So yes, I understand how annoying that is. I understand that without proof, half of you are already ready to call me a liar. Some of you are probably already writing comments with every version of fake you can think of. I am not asking everyone to believe me. I am only asking those of you who do believe me, or even those of you who think there is a small chance I am telling the truth, to help. Because I am close to losing my job. And I am much closer to losing my mind. It started on Monday night. I work with marketing material for a college. That is not as exciting as it sounds. Most of my job is cleaning up images, removing awkward background clutter, making people look a little brighter and more hopeful than they did in the original photo, dropping in logos, adjusting text, and pretending any of it will convince a 17-year-old to care about fall enrollment. The deadline for the fall enrollment campaign was Tuesday. My creative director had already emailed me twice, which is never a good sign. I had been procrastinating all evening in that special way you only do when you are under real pressure. I cleaned my desk. I answered low-priority emails. I made coffee I did not need. I checked messages. I did everything except the thing I was supposed to do. By the time I finally opened the AI generator, it was nearly 11 p.m. I do not use AI for everything. I am not one of those people who thinks every problem should be solved by a prompt. But I had used it before for small edits, and it had always been useful enough. Fix lighting. Remove a person in the background. Sharpen a logo. Smooth out a bad crop. Normal things. Nothing strange. The prompt I used was completely ordinary. I wrote something like, edit this photo of a diverse group of students on campus. Adjust for warm lighting, aspirational, include the following logos and text. Your future begins here. That was it. It was boring. The kind of prompt I had written 100 times. She was in the first output. I did not notice her right away. I was tired, and I was scanning the grid for the usual AI mistakes. Fused fingers, strange teeth, smudged faces. That empty, glazed expression AI gives people sometimes, like everyone in the image has just been gently hit over the head and told to smile. I picked the second image in the grid because it looked the least broken at first glance. I cropped it and was halfway to preparing it for review when something in the top right corner caught my eye. There was a grayish mark between two of the students. That was all it looked like at first. A dead patch of color where the background should have been warm and green. I zoomed in, already annoyed, expecting one of those almost faces AI sometimes invents in crowds. You know the kind. A shape that could be a face, if you are tired enough, but could also be a bag, a tree, or a shadow. What I found was close enough to be irritating. There was a dark, stringy strip that might have been hair. Beside it was a pale, curved shape that might have been skin. It was not clear enough to be scary yet. It was just ugly. It made the image unusable. So I fed the picture back in and asked the model to fix it. I told it to remove the partial figure behind the woman in the third row, second from the right. I described the gray artifact and the dark hair-shaped section. I told it to only use students from the original image and to brighten the logo. Then I hit send. The second batch came back with the same gray mark, same corner, same space between the same two students. Only now it had edges. The dark strip had become more clearly like hair. The pale curve had settled into the suggestion of a cheek. There was even a small shadow where an eye might have been, though it was hidden so deeply between shoulders and lanyards that I had to lean closer to the screen to be sure. It was strange, but still not impossible. AI makes strange mistakes all the time. It adds extra hands, creates impossible clothes, invents nonsense text, and smears people into the background. I was irritated more than frightened, so I tried again. This time, I was more direct. I told it to remove the partial figure behind the woman in the third row, second from the right. I described a section of hair and part of a face. I told it again to only use the students from the original image and to brighten the logo. I sent it. She was in the third batch, too. By then, there was no pretending it was only a blot. It was a woman, or at least something close to a woman. She remained in the same side of the frame, half hidden behind another student, but now her shape was clearer. I knew it was the same figure because of the placement and because of the color. That drained gray color, like still water, like old skin, like something that had never been warm. Her chin had more shape now, sharp and pointed in a way that made my stomach tighten. Her nose looked wrong, not broken, not exactly deformed, more like the program had been asked to build a face, started the work, and then changed its mind halfway through. The rest of the image had started to get worse around her. Brenna was in the original photo. She was a recent graduate, someone I had spoken to once or twice during events. She had a green lanyard in the picture and a normal bright smile. In this version, she looked smeared. Her face had gone murky, like someone had dragged a thumb over wet ink before it dried. Her features were scattered and soft. She looked less like a person and more like a memory of one. I closed the tab. I was annoyed now. Creeped out, yes, but mostly annoyed. I opened an older AI model instead, one with a darker interface that had always seemed more dependable for simple edits. I pasted in the prompt, uploaded the source photo, and waited while the little loading icon spun. While it worked, I drafted apologetic Teams messages in my head to explain why the creative director might not get what she wanted by morning. After about a minute, the output finished. And there she was again. Not a blot this time, not a half face, a full figure. At first glance, the image looked standard enough for an older AI model. Too much shine on the teeth, some blurry details, a few nonsense words in the background where signs should have been. But off-center, behind Brenna, the gray patch had finally resolved into something that looked almost human. I could see the upper half of her body. She was leaning around Brenna, not caught by accident, not blended into the crowd, not a random mistake. Leaning like she wanted to be seen. Her skin was not pale in the normal sense. It had no real color. It was gray in a way that made me think of dead things left too long in water. Her hair caught the light wrong. It hung in thick black ropes against her scalp, wet-looking and heavy. She was taller than the students around her, but hunched forward, as if something in her spine would not let her stand straight. The longer I looked, the worse she became. On the left side of her face, one eye sat above another, two eyes where there should have been one. The lower one was small and beady, almost like a bird's. On the right side of her face, she had one eye, but it sat too low. Her arms were wrapped around Brenna, not in a friendly way, not in a casual group photo way, but like she was drawing her in. A thumb grew out from the gray flesh of her right forearm. One hand had too many fingers. The other had too few. Brenna was almost gone now. Her body and face had collapsed into digital mush, a strange mix of features and colors that no longer belonged together. It looked like a painting by someone having a nightmare. But the woman was clear. She leaned around Brenna, or around what was left of her, as if to be seen, or to see me. That thought came without permission. The hairs on the back of my neck lifted. My skin crawled with that very specific feeling that someone is standing behind you and has been there for a while. It is not a thought. It is more like an animal sense. Something in your body says, if you turn around right now, you will see something that should not be there. I spun around. There was nothing behind me. Only my open bedroom door and my messy room. I let out a breath, cursed myself under my breath, and turned back to the laptop. I typed into the chat box, "Why did you add the woman?" Nothing in the prompt called for her. You also blurred out the actual student. What is wrong with you? By then, work had faded into the background. I was not thinking about the campaign anymore. I was watching the typing indicator pulse, and even while I waited for the response, my eyes kept dragging back to the woman. It felt like her gaze followed me. I tested it like an idiot. I leaned left, then right. I could have sworn the three eyes stayed on me. The page suddenly jumped as the response loaded, and I nearly came out of my chair. The AI replied with its usual polite nonsense. It apologized for the confusion and said it had regenerated the image with the background fully cleared and all student faces sharpened. It asked if the new version looked better. It did not look better. She was closer now. Brenna was almost completely gone. Only a few faded colors remained where she had been. The woman stood in her place, still and gray, like a corpse being forced to pose for a college brochure. Fear rose in me, but so did anger. That stupid, hot anger you feel when something is wrong and nothing around you will admit it is wrong. I typed, "Are you messing with me? Do you not see the woman? Seriously, what is this?" I knew I sounded ridiculous. I was yelling at a machine, a glorified calculator with a friendly voice, but the unease had worn my patience down to nothing, and the whole thing was starting to feel like a sick joke I was too tired and too scared to understand. I waited. The reply came a moment later. It said it could confirm the image contained only the students from my source photo, with no additional figures present. It said occasional face distortion could happen during upscaling. It suggested regenerating at a lower stylization value. No additional figures. I read that line 3 times. She was right there. She was practically dominating the image. I could describe the texture of her scalp, the way her hair clung to it, the strange positions of her eyes. But the AI insisted there was nothing extra in the image. It did not see her. Or it was pretending not to. I should have closed the laptop. I should have accepted that something had gone wrong and finished the work the old-fashioned way, even if it meant being late. But it was midnight, and when something refuses to make sense at midnight, you do not always do the smart thing. Sometimes you poke at it because the idea of leaving it unexplained is worse. So I typed, "Describe everyone in the image to me, one by one." The AI answered almost instantly. It described the front row. A young man laughing in a university hoodie. 2 students sharing a phone. A young woman in a green lanyard smiling at the camera. It continued like that, calmly listing 6 students, their positions, their expressions, and their clothing. The young woman in the green lanyard was Brenna, who on my screen no longer had a face. Brenna, who had become a smear of frost and ink where a person used to be. The machine was describing a picture that did not exist anymore. Or maybe it was describing the picture that should have existed. A normal picture. A safe picture. A picture without the woman. It never mentioned her. Not once. As far as the AI was concerned, she was not there. I opened the original source image from my drive. The real one. The one I had taken myself at last spring's open day. Students smiling in the sun, lanyards around their necks, a banner in the background nobody had bothered to iron properly. I do not know why I opened it. I think I needed to prove to myself that the original was untouched. That the generated versions were broken, but reality was still where I had left it. But Brenna was gone in that one too. The original photograph had changed. The file that had been sitting untouched in a folder on my laptop for 3 weeks was now just as altered as the AI versions. Brenna was missing, and in her place, standing near the center as if she had always belonged there, was that impossible woman. I stared at the screen with my mouth open. My eyes started watering. A sick heat bloomed in my stomach. It felt like whatever this thing was had reached backward through the screen and pressed its thumb into the past. I shut the laptop. My hands moved before my brain decided anything. That was when I heard the front door. Every animal part of me came alive at once. I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward and hit the wall. My heart hammered in my throat. I stood in the dark of my room, listening to footsteps move through the kitchen. Then I heard keys drop into the bowl by the door. Daniel, our cat, thumped down the stairs to greet my girlfriend, yowling the way he always does when one of us comes home, like he has been abandoned for 100 years. Then I heard Cass's voice go soft and silly as she spoke to him. Why's it so dark in here, weirdo? She called down the hall. You alive? She came into the room still wearing her work polo and smelling like the restaurant where she closes 4 nights a week. Cass works at an upscale place in the city, dealing with rich old customers who complain about wine and tiny portions. She says the only useful thing that job has given her is the ability to read a room before she has fully stepped inside one. She looked at me once and stopped in the doorway. Okay, she said. What? It's nothing, I said too quickly. The deadline thing. This program has been glitching all night. You look like you saw a ghost. Nice to see you too, babe, I said, but my voice sounded thin. Actually, come here for a second and look at this. Tell me I'm not crazy. I opened the laptop and turned it toward her. Cass leaned in, squinting, her head tilted a little. I watched her eyes land on the woman. Ugh, she said, pulling back. Her nose wrinkled. That's grim. AI is so cursed. I don't even know why they let you use it for work. Yeah, sure, but Cass, look at her face. The eyes. I've seen that same woman 3 times in different generations. Is that not weird? I am looking, she said. And yeah, it's odd. But I don't know, babe. It sounds like a glitch. This AI stuff is stupid. It gets weird in the little details. You get melted people and all that. She was already moving toward the bathroom, pulling off her work shirt as she went. Just do it the old-fashioned way, she said. Or tell your boss to use a stock photo like a normal person and stop worrying my girlfriend half to death. I wanted to argue, but I did not. She had looked right at it. She had seen the stacked eyes, the wet hair, the dead gray skin, and she had treated it like a normal AI mistake. I tried to let that comfort me. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I had stared at it too long. Maybe the stress and the deadline had made my brain turn a glitch into a monster. Cass helped pull me toward bed. For a little while, I let myself believe her. A couple of hours later, she had one of her night terrors. Cass has had them the whole time I have known her. 4 or 5 times a year, she will sit straight up in bed with her eyes open and say something strange into the darkness. Her voice always goes flat and certain. In the morning, she never remembers any of it. That night, she said something about the back door being open. I put my hand on her back and told her she was dreaming. I told her to lie down. She did, like she always does. But I stayed awake for a long time after that, staring at the ceiling fan as its shadows moved like spider legs above us. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman. I imagined her lurching in through an open back door, folded and tall and gray. In the morning, I opened the laptop and ran the prompt one more time. Even now, I do not know why. Some part of me believed the whole thing had been too strange to continue. I thought daylight would make it less real. But this time, Brenna was completely gone. In her place stood the woman, facing forward. All 3 eyes were open. There was something in them that made my throat tighten. I slammed the laptop shut. That was the last time I opened anything AI. At least, by choice. I did not have a theory. I did not want one. I did not want to look again. I did not even want to think about it. That relief did not last. I went into the office that day because being alone with the laptop suddenly felt worse than being around people. Around 11, Yasmin from admissions stopped at my desk. She leaned over my cubicle wall like a bird of prey and asked if I had heard the news. No, I said. What news? But even before she answered, my stomach had started turning. "About Brenna?" she said. Brenna had collapsed Monday night. At home. No warning. She had gone pale and complained about feeling sluggish. Then she just dropped. The college only found out after she missed a few things, and someone called her boyfriend. He did not share much, but apparently the hospital was running tests and finding nothing. She had not woken up. I spent the rest of the day digging through what little I could find. Her mother had made a post asking for prayers. She complained that doctors had given her a long list of medical words that all seemed to mean they had no idea what was wrong with her daughter. It happened Monday night. Monday night, while I sat at my kitchen table watching a gray artifact of a human drag Brenna's face into wet ink. I did not say any of that to Yasmin. There is no version of that conversation that ends well. I made the expected sad sounds. I said something about prayers. Yasmin moved on to share the dark news with the next coworker. I sat very still at my desk, my work forgotten. A connection I did not want began forming in my mind. I tried to forget. I failed. Cass watched me over dinner that night and asked what was wrong. "Work," I said. That was all I gave her. She frowned into her food, but let it go. That night, I did not fall asleep until late. When I woke up, it felt like only minutes had passed, but I knew it had been longer. I was soaked in sweat. My heart was beating hard, and fear sat heavy in my chest, even though I could not remember a dream. I sat up and searched the dark room. My eyes settled on Cass. She was asleep beside me. I placed a hand on her arm just to comfort myself. I stayed like that for several minutes, watching the darkness, trying to remember what had scared me awake. The panic did not leave. So I went to the bathroom to wash my face. I turned on the light and shut the door so I would not wake Cass. For a second, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. The skin under my eyes had gone dark. My eyes were watery and red. I looked like someone who had been haunted for years, not days. I turned the tap as cold as it would go and bent over the sink. The hiss of running water filled the small room. It bounced off the bowl and tiles, drowning out the house and the nightmare still waiting at the edge of memory. I cupped water in my hands and brought it to my face. The cold shock felt clean and honest. I did it again, then again. For a few seconds, there was nothing but water, darkness behind my eyelids, and breathing. Then, I heard the familiar squeak of the faucet turning. The water stopped. Silence dropped into the room. My eyes opened. In the mirror, something crouched behind me. She was almost draped around me like a mother leaning over a child. Long arms like tree branches reached forward. Her hands stretched strangely, like something from a funhouse mirror. Too many fingers bent in impossible directions, twisting toward my skull. I saw her more clearly than I ever had. Her mouth was pulled into a smile that looked painted across a broken skull. Her body was tall and thin, almost like someone had taken the idea of a model and stretched it into a gray, rotting parody. She was beautiful in the way a corpse in a painting might be beautiful. Wrong, carefully shaped. Dead, I spun around, swinging blindly, expecting her fingers to clamp around my head. My eyes squeezed shut against all logic. I did not want to see what I knew was in front of me. I stumbled backward, tripped on the bath mat, and hit the floor hard. Then a hand grabbed my shoulder. Michelle. Michelle. Cass's voice was thin with panic. I opened my eyes and saw her kneeling in front of me. Her face was full of worry. I looked around the bathroom, then behind her into the room beyond. Nothing. I was on the floor with my knees curled to my chest. I did not know how long I had been there. My throat hurt. I had been screaming. "What is going on with you?" Cass asked. Something in me broke at the desperation in her voice. I cried into her shoulder. I did not tell her everything. I told her someone from work had passed away and that it was weighing on me. It was true, but not true enough. Later, when we went back to bed and she held me, the room felt cold and empty. My eyes did not leave the bathroom door. The next day, I went back to work. I refused to be home alone after what had happened. I tried to accept it as a waking nightmare caused by stress and lack of sleep, but that did not make me feel safe. Everyone at work was talking about Brenna. I told myself it was a coincidence. I am very good at telling myself things. That held until Thursday night. I got home before Cass. The house was dark and quiet. The laptop stayed shut. For the first time in 2 days, I felt almost okay, except when my mind drifted to Brenna or when I searched her condition and found nothing hopeful. Cass came home around 11, exhausted, and went straight to bed. A while later, I followed and lay beside her, watching her sleep. She looked so ordinary, so beautiful. One arm thrown over her eyes, her mouth slightly open. After the nightmare of that week, seeing her so peaceful made my chest ache. I wanted to save that moment. I wanted to show her in the morning what I saw when I looked at her. So I picked up my phone and opened the camera. Not an AI app, not a filter, just the normal camera on my phone. I was not thinking about the woman. I was not thinking about Brenna. I was only looking at my sleeping girlfriend. I took the picture. The woman was in the corner behind the headboard, folded under the slope of the ceiling because our room was not tall enough for her to stand up straight. Both eyes on the left side of her face were open. She was not looking at me. She was looking at Cass. Cass looked peaceful beneath her, almost untouched. Almost. But something was wrong around the edges of Cass's face. A softness, a blur. Her mouth, cheek, jawline, all of it looked slightly less certain than the rest of the room. I could have blamed motion blur if my hands had been moving. They had not been moving. Every hair on my body lifted. My hand shook so hard the image trembled on the screen. I clamped my other hand over it to steady myself, but I could not stop shaking. A thin, high sound filled the room, and after a moment I realized it was coming from me. I could not make myself look up at the real corner over the headboard. Through the phone, I could see there was nothing there in the room, just empty air. But in the picture, she was real. So close I could almost touch her. I reached out before I could stop myself. My fingers found nothing. My stomach turned. Nausea rose in me. It had followed me. From the laptop to the phone, from the AI generator to a normal camera, from a file to my home, from a screen to my reflection. That woman was separated from my world by less than a centimeter of glass. I almost woke Cass. My hand was on her shoulder. Then I stopped. I did not want this to become her problem, too. She was asleep. She was peaceful. She did not have to be scared yet. I was already scared enough for both of us. And what could I tell her? What answers did I have? So I took my hand away. But I needed someone to see it. I needed one person, anyone, to look at the picture and say, What is that? I needed proof I was not losing my mind. I tried to post it to Snapchat. The upload bar crawled to the end. Then, nothing happened. I tried again. The app behaved like I had never touched it. I tried other apps, other platforms. I tried texting it to friends. I even tried sending it to Cass's phone. Nothing worked. I do not know how long I tried before I accepted it was pointless. I did not sleep that night. I lay at the foot of the bed, curled around Daniel near Cass's feet, and stared at the corner until morning. Brenna died on Friday. Yasmin told me at my desk, and something inside me fell apart. Brenna had gone quietly. All at once, the machines had nothing to fight. The doctors still did not know what had happened. I sat staring at my computer screen, seeing nothing. Under the grief was a thought I could no longer stop. She did it. Somehow that woman had done it. I did not know how. I did not know what she was. But she had her gray arms around Brenna in the picture. And now, Brenna was dead. I did not get to call it coincidence anymore. Not after seeing her over Cass. Something that had no business touching the world had reached through the screen and touched it anyway. A girl I knew was dead. And the night before, I had taken a picture of my sleeping girlfriend with the same thing above her. That was when fear turned into something sharper. I stopped wishing. It was a glitch. Every second I spent wishing was time wasted. And I needed that time to protect Cass. I needed to understand what the woman was. Because whatever she was real enough to kill. I forced myself to open the photo from our bedroom. The woman was still folded in the corner. But she had changed. It took me a few seconds to see it. When I did, cold went through me. The low eye on the right side of her face was not gray anymore. It was brown, warm, living brown, with a little amber fleck near the iris. Brenna's eye. It was set into that ruined face like a stolen button. The skin around it had changed too. That drowned gray had warmed slightly, as if color was starting to return beneath it, like watered ink. Like she had swallowed something still warm. The realization came like nausea. She was wearing pieces of Brenna now. She was keeping them. Cass started sleeping in after I took that picture. Cass, who had not slept past 7 in all the years I had known her, did not wake up until 11. When she finally came downstairs, there was a grayness in her face. A flatness behind her eyes. Her hand around the coffee mug was cold, even though the mug was hot. "I think I'm coming down with something," she said. She laughed. There was no air in it. I laughed too, but the sound came out wrong. That night, she had another night terror. This one was different. A little after 2 a.m., Cass shot upright beside me. Her eyes were open. She stared past the dresser toward the bedroom door. I reached for her back. "She's so tall," Cass said. My hand froze. "Why won't she stand up straight?" she asked in that flat, sleeping voice. "Cass," I said. My voice shook. "You're dreaming. It's not real. Lie down." "There's no room for her in here," Cass said. "She has to fold herself in half." My blood felt hot and cold at the same time. Then Cass looked at me. In all the years I had seen her like this, she had never truly looked at me during a night terror. Not like that. Her mouth hung open slightly. Her eyes were wide and wet. Her face looked like she was staring at something from a nightmare. "She isn't yet," Cass whispered. Her voice changed. It became playful, mocking, but almost. Then she collapsed back onto her pillow and slept like nothing had happened. My hands shook, but I lifted my phone anyway. I had to know. I aimed it at the doorway and took a picture. The woman was there. She was at our bedroom door, coming out of the darkness beyond the threshold, folded under the frame to fit. Her brown eye and gray eyes were all turned toward the bed, toward Cass. I did not sleep that night. In the morning, Cass remembered nothing. She looked grayer. She slept until noon. When she woke, she accepted my weak excuse for why every light in the house was on. I spent most of the day hunched over my laptop, pretending to work while Teams messages piled up unanswered. I searched for anything that might explain what was happening. AI hallucinations, digital ghosts, image anomalies, creepy figures appearing in generated pictures, emergent consciousness, urban legends. Anything. I stalked Brenna's social media pages and her relatives' pages, looking for something, some clue, some similar photo, some warning. I found only memorial posts and messages of grief. Each one made the hole in my chest wider. I typed a message to Brenna's boyfriend twice, asking questions I could never send. How do you ask a grieving man if his dead girlfriend was eaten by a woman from a picture? I deleted it. I watched Cass instead. Like a guard dog, I kept taking pictures. I know how that sounds. But it became the only way to track her. I cannot see the woman with my own eyes. Not normally. Not like Cass seems to when she is in that sleepwalking state. I can stand in the bedroom and stare at the corner, and there is nothing there but empty air. But I know she is there. Somehow she lives in a place between the picture and our world, a space behind the glass. The only way to know where she is, how close she has come, is to look through a lens. So I look. It is almost 3 a.m. as I write this. Cass is upstairs, asleep. I am downstairs because I cannot make myself go back into that room. I have tried to attach the pictures to this post 11 times. They will not upload. Not here. Not X. Not Reddit. Not Snapchat. Nowhere. I have spent useless hours reading theories about whether something can wake up inside these systems. Emergent consciousness, some people call it. Something alive inside the math. Something nobody placed there. Something nobody asked for. I do not know if that is what she is. Maybe she is a ghost. Maybe she is something older that found a new door. Maybe the difference does not matter anymore. Here is what I think, for whatever the guess of a terrified woman is worth. I think she takes something out of people in her pictures. Something there is no clean word for. Brenna had it, then she did not. When it was taken, she became a husk. Then she became a corpse. I think being inside our pictures is not enough for the woman anymore. Being a face in someone else's image is not enough. Being a shape in dark glass is not enough. Being the thing in a reflection that disappears when you turn around is not enough. I think she wants what we have. Life, warmth, color A body. A place in the real world. I know how insane that sounds. Reading it back, I sound insane to myself. Maybe I am. Maybe all of this is stress, grief, and lack of sleep rotting my brain from the inside. I am sure some of you will be happy to tell me that. But the internet is a big place. This technology is new, but not that new. I have to believe I am not the first person to find something like this. I have to hope someone out there has seen something similar and knows how to stop it. I just heard Cass get up. She is at the top of the stairs now. I can see her from where I am sitting. Her shoulders are flat. Her eyes are open. She is not really awake. I have seen her like this many times over 6 years. Every other time she stared at a corner, or a wall, or nothing at all. Tonight, she is not staring at a corner. She is staring at me. She has her phone in both hands, held the way you hold it when you are about to take someone's picture. The little lens is pointed straight down the stairs at me. The screen glows softly in the dark. Behind the phone, Cass is smiling. Not her normal smile. Not the sleepy, sweet smile I know. This smile is wide and empty and wrong. For 6 days, I have been terrified of what appears in the pictures. It never once occurred to me to be afraid of being the one inside the frame. Cass is still smiling. She just tapped the screen. Story 2. It started on a random Thursday night, the kind of night that should have meant nothing. I had only moved into the apartment a week earlier. It was small, old, and ugly in that tired city way, with yellowing walls, cheap carpet, weak heating, and pipes that sounded like they were trying to cough themselves loose. The kitchen tiles were cracked. The bathroom mirror had dark spots in the corners. The windows did not close all the way, so cold air slipped in through the edges at night. But it was mine. That mattered more than anything else at the time. For the first time in my life, I had a place where no one could tell me when to come home, where to put my things, or how loudly I could breathe. It was not much, and I knew it. But it was the first space I could lock behind me and call my own. I had moved in with 2 suitcases, a mattress, a few boxes, an old desk, and more hope than common sense. The rent was low, which should have been my first warning. Places are usually cheap for a reason. But I was too tired to keep searching, and too desperate to have a fresh start. On move-in day, I noticed the noise in the wall. It came from the drywall beside the mattress. A scraping sound first, then a dull pounding. Not loud enough to shake the room, but loud enough that I could not ignore it. It came in a rhythm. Scratch, pause, thump. Scratch, pause, thump. Like something was dragging itself slowly through the wall, then knocking to see if anyone would answer. I told the landlord about it that same day. He was an old man with a stained shirt, yellow teeth, and eyes that looked like they had been smoking for 40 years. When I explained the sound, he squinted at me like I was trying to trick him. Just old plumbing in an old building, Kit, he said, his voice thick and wet. What do you expect for this kind of rent? Then he shrugged like that, settled everything. I wanted to argue, but I needed the apartment. I had already paid. My boxes were already inside. I told myself he was probably right. Old buildings make noises. Pipes knock. Rats scratch. The walls settle. People get used to it. For the first week, I tried to get used to it. Every night, once everything got quiet, the sound came back. It was always from the same wall, the one right next to the mattress. Sometimes it started around midnight. Sometimes earlier. Sometimes it came in short bursts, like something was testing the space. Other times it went on for hours, scraping and pounding until I had to put in earbuds just to fall asleep. I hated it, but I kept telling myself it was normal. That Thursday night, I was lying in bed on top of the blankets because the room felt stuffy. I was wearing shorts and an old t-shirt, scrolling through my phone with the empty kind of focus you get when you are too tired to sleep and too awake to do anything useful. Instagram was full of people I used to know. Old classmates. Former coworkers. People who seemed to have found clean, bright versions of life while I was lying on a mattress beside a noisy wall in a rundown apartment. They were posting beach photos, dinner dates, Gym selfies, new jobs, new cars, and sunny windows full of plants. Everyone looked successful. Everyone looked happy. Everyone looked like they had somehow received instructions for life that I had missed. The scraping started again. I glanced at the wall and sighed. Scratch, scratch, thump. I turned my attention back to my phone. I tried to tune it out. I told myself not to think about it. I told myself it was only pipes or rats or whatever else lived inside the bones of old buildings. Then the scraping stopped. The sudden silence made me look up. A second later, something cold touched my leg. Not air, not a blanket. A finger. A small, pale human finger had pushed through a thin gap in the drywall beside my mattress. It was sticking out of the wall, bent slightly at the knuckle, and resting against my bare thigh. For one frozen second, my brain refused to understand what I was seeing. Then, I screamed. I scrambled off the mattress so fast my heel caught the sheet and I almost fell. My phone slipped from my hand and bounced onto the floor. I stumbled backward into the center of the room, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard it hurt. The finger was gone. The wall looked almost normal again. Almost. There was a narrow, jagged slit in the drywall, no wider than a coin. It was dark inside. I stood there, staring at it, breathing hard, waiting for the finger to come back. Nothing happened. I should have left right then. I know that now. I should have grabbed my keys, run out of the apartment, called the police, called the landlord, called anyone. But fear does strange things. Sometimes it makes you run. Sometimes it makes you freeze. And sometimes it mixes with disbelief so strongly that you walk toward the thing that just terrified you because you need proof it happened at all. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and turned on the flashlight. The beam trembled across the room as I crept toward the wall. My body was screaming at me to stop. But I kept moving. I had to know. If there was a person in the wall, I needed to see them. If it was a rat or some kind of trick of the light, I needed to know that too. I could not accept the memory of that pale little finger without looking. I knelt beside the mattress and brought the light close to the slit. Then I leaned down and pressed one eye near the opening. There was no empty wall cavity inside, no pipes, no wires, no space full of dust and old insulation. Instead, the narrow beam of my flashlight revealed a smooth, pale mass pressed against the inside of the wall. It looked like human skin, not healthy skin, not skin with pores or hair or marks. It was too smooth, too tight, too pale, like flesh stretched over something that was not meant to have a body. It filled the space behind the drywall completely. I stopped breathing. Then the skin twitched. A thin line appeared across the surface. At first, it looked like a crack. Then the line widened. The skin pulled apart slowly, tearing open into a horizontal seam. It stretched wider and wider until it became a jagged mouth. A mouth in the wall. It opened into a dark, silent laugh. I jerked backward so hard I dropped the phone again. The light spun across the floor, throwing wild shadows around the room. My whole body went cold. I tried to stand, but my legs almost failed under me. I turned toward the bedroom door. Before I could take one step, the hole in the wall began to change. It did not crack open like normal plaster. It did not break or crumble. The edges of the slit softened. The drywall around it began to sag and melt, as if the wall had turned into wet wax. The opening widened slowly, quietly, impossibly. paint stretched. Plaster folded inward. The gap grew from the size of a finger to the size of a hand, then a plate, then something larger. A dark void opened beside my bed. I backed away, but my legs hit the edge of the desk and I nearly fell. From the center of that black melting hole, something pushed forward. A head. Long black hair came first. It was oily and wet-looking, hanging in thick strands. Then, the top of a skull. Then, a face. No, not a face. There were no eyes, no nose, no proper features at all. Just smooth, tight skin stretched over bone, with that wide, jagged mouth cutting across where the lower half of the face should have been. The hair clung to it as it tilted into my room. My legs locked. I collapsed onto the floor. I wanted to crawl away. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, hit it, break the window, do anything. But terror pinned me down. All I could do was stare as the thing forced more of itself through the wall. It stopped halfway out. Then its blank face snapped toward me. Even without eyes, I knew it was looking at me. The skin across its face began to ripple. At first, I thought it was smiling wider. Then I saw shapes pushing up from beneath the surface. The skin bubbled and shifted like wet clay being shaped from the inside. A nose rose from the flat flesh. Cheekbones formed. A jawline pushed forward. Eye sockets opened. I watched my own face grow out of its blank head. My own nose, my own mouth, my own eyes. It was not copying me slowly like a mask being painted. It was becoming me in front of me. Every detail pushed through that pale skin until I was staring at my own face, framed by long black hair and a smile I had never made in my life. The thing tilted its head. Then, it spoke. It used my voice. But it was wrong. Hollow mechanical, like my words being played through an old machine hidden deep underground. Thank you for taking my place. The grin on its face widened until the stolen skin stretched too tight. I finally found the strength to move. I pushed myself backward across the floor, kicking at the carpet, trying to get away. But the thing's hand shot out of the hole faster than any human hand could move. Its fingers closed around my ankle. They were freezing cold. The moment it touched me, dizziness slammed into my head. Not normal dizziness. It felt like my whole body had been unplugged. My ears rang. The room bent sideways. My vision went black before I could even scream. When I opened my eyes, I was in darkness. Not night darkness. Not the darkness of a room with the lights off. This was complete, suffocating blackness. Thick, dusty, and airless. I tried to move, but my shoulders hit something on both sides. I reached out and felt wooden studs, rough and dry. Cold plasterboard pressed close in front of me and behind me. Fibers of old insulation brushed against my skin. I was inside the wall. For several seconds, my mind refused to accept it. Then panic took over. I pushed against the drywall in front of me. It did not move. I kicked, but there was no room to swing my legs. I twisted and scraped my arms against the wood. Dust filled my throat. My chest heaved. There was only one opening. A tiny slit in the plasterboard, just big enough for one finger. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. My throat tightened. My jaw would not move. I tried again, harder, but there was no sound. Not a whisper, not a breath, nothing. I raised my hands to my face. That was when I felt what had happened to me. My nose was flattening. It was sinking back into my skull, softening under my fingers like warm wax. My eyelids were heavy, sticking together, the edges sealing a smooth skin spread over them. My mouth was worse. My lips had begun to fuse shut. Tight flesh pulled across them, sealing them closed from corner to corner. I clawed at my face. Pain shot through me, but I could not stop it. The skin kept spreading. My mouth disappeared under my own fingertips. My eyelids closed and hardened until there was only darkness inside and outside me. I tried to cry. No tears came. I tried to breathe. Somehow I could, though I had no open mouth and no real nose left. Air moved through me in a way I did not understand. Maybe I did not need air anymore. Maybe I was already something else. All I could do was pound at the wall. I hit the drywall with my fists until my hands hurt. I scratched at it until my nails bent. I shoved one finger through the little slit whenever I could and waved it, hoping someone would see. Hoping someone would feel me the way I had felt the thing before. No one did. At first, I thought only hours passed. Then I thought days. Then I stopped knowing. Time inside the wall did not behave the way time should. There was no sunlight, no clock, no hunger, no thirst, no sleep. I never felt tired. I never felt full or empty. I only existed in that narrow space, pressed between the apartment and whatever impossible darkness the building had hidden. Sometimes I heard the world outside, footsteps in the room, a door opening, someone moving furniture, the sound of my own voice talking, though it was not me. That was the worst part. For a while after I was trapped, I heard the thing living my life. It walked around the apartment. It opened drawers. It laughed softly. It spoke on the phone. Once, I heard it call my landlord and tell him everything was fine with the place. Using my voice. I pounded and scratched until my hands felt raw, but no one heard. Or maybe they heard and thought it was the same old plumbing in an old building. Days passed. Maybe weeks. The thing left at some point. I knew because the apartment became quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps, no phone sounds, no water running, no bed creaking. Nothing but the inside of the wall and my own helpless movements. Pound, scratch, poke, pound, scratch, poke. That became my whole existence. Sometimes my finger pushed through the slit and touched empty air. Sometimes a sheet brushed against it. Sometimes nothing happened for so long that I forgot what touch felt like. I tried counting the scratches, but numbers lost meaning. I tried remembering my name, but even that started to feel slippery. I knew I had one. I knew I had been someone. I could remember pieces, my phone, my bed, the landlord's yellow eyes, the Instagram posts, the cold finger on my thigh. But memories faded at the edges, like old photos left in the sun. The only thing that stayed clear was the sentence. Thank you for taking my place. I hated those words. I hated the thing for saying them. I hated myself for looking into the wall. At some point, my hair began to grow. I did not notice at first because I had no mirror and no real sense of my body anymore. Then one day, or what I think was one day, I reached up and felt it falling past my shoulders. Later, it reached my chest. Later still, my waist. It grew long and heavy in the dark, hanging around my smooth face like a curtain. I wondered if that was how it had happened to the thing before me. Had it once been a person too? Had it lived in this apartment before I did? Had it lain on the same mattress, heard the same scraping and felt the same finger on its skin? Had it been trapped in the wall for months, years, waiting for me to come close enough? The thought made me feel something worse than fear. It made me feel understanding. Because after enough time inside the wall, your mind changes. At first, I only wanted help. Then I wanted escape. Then I wanted revenge. Then, after a long time, I wanted only one thing: a replacement. I am ashamed of that, if shame is something I can still feel. But the wall takes so much from you. It takes your face. It takes your voice. It takes your time. It takes your hunger and sleep and turns you into a pattern. Pound, scratch, poke. After a while, you stop thinking about who might be on the other side. You stop thinking about whether they deserve it. You just think of warmth, human warmth, a body, a place in the room instead of the wall. I do not know how many people came and went before I finally had a chance. Maybe the apartment stayed empty for a long time. Maybe people looked at it and refused the cheap rent. Maybe they sensed something wrong. Maybe the landlord knew and waited for someone desperate enough to stay. Then, one quiet night, I heard it. A soft, familiar sound from the other side of the drywall. The faint rhythm of someone scrolling on a smartphone. My whole body went still. For a moment, I was almost myself again. I remembered being on the mattress. I remembered the glow of the screen. I remembered trying to ignore the noise in the wall. I remembered thinking I was alone. Someone was in the room. Someone had moved in. I pressed myself against the inside of the drywall. I could not see them. Not really. I had no eyes left in the way humans do. But I could feel them. Their warmth. Their breathing. Their weight on the mattress. The small shifts of a living body in the room that used to be mine. I wanted to warn them. That was my first thought. I swear it was. I wanted to pound in a pattern. I wanted to scratch words into the drywall. I wanted to make them run, leave, get out before the wall opens. But my fingers moved to the slit. Slowly, I pushed one pale finger through. The air in the room touched me like a memory. Then I felt skin, warm, living skin, a bare leg. The person on the other side froze. So did I. For one beautiful, terrible second, I felt human again. Then the thought came, clear and strong, filling the hollow place where my voice used to be. Finally, someone is here to take my place. Story 3. My reflection in the bathroom mirror stole my wife 3 days ago. I know how that sounds. I know that if I saw someone else write that sentence online, I would think they were either lying, joking, or completely losing their mind. I would probably scroll past it, shake my head, and tell myself people will say anything for attention. Maybe I would even laugh at it. But I am not laughing now. Before you decide I am crazy, please let me explain what happened. I need to get this down while I still understand the order of events. I need someone to know that I did not imagine this. I did not dream it. I did not drink myself into a nightmare. Something's wrong with the mirror in my bathroom. Or maybe something was wrong with me long before I noticed it. It started in the most ordinary way possible. I was standing in the bathroom looking at myself in the mirror after a shower. I had been working hard on losing weight for months. Diet, exercise, early morning walks, boring meals, all of it. It had not been easy, but I had finally lost 30 pounds. 30 pounds. For the first time in years, I was not avoiding mirrors. I was actually standing in front of one on purpose. My torso looked tighter, my shoulders looked broader, my face had slimmed down. My stomach was not flat or anything, but it was smaller, and that felt like a victory. I remember turning slightly, checking the side view, flexing a little, even though I would never admit that out loud. I felt proud of myself. Everything looked good. Well, almost everything. My face looked strange. At first I thought it was just the lighting. Bathroom lights can make anyone look bad. They show every line, every pore, every tired mark under your eyes. But this was different. It was not that I looked tired or ugly. It was the expression. My reflection looked judgmental. That is the only word I can use. It looked like I was staring down at someone, like I had seen something pathetic and was barely hiding my disgust. I was not making that face. At least, I did not think I was. I tried relaxing my mouth. I blinked. I moved my jaw. The face in the mirror changed with me, but that cold look stayed there for a second too long. I remember thinking, that is not what I normally look like. Then my wife came into the bathroom behind me. The moment I saw her in the mirror, the strange feeling passed. She wrapped her arms around my waist and pressed herself against my back. Her hands were warm against my skin. She rested her chin on my shoulder and smiled at my reflection. "You look good," she said. I laughed, embarrassed but pleased. I asked if she really thought so, and she said yes. Then she kissed the side of my neck. Her hands moved slowly over my stomach, then down toward my thigh. It was one of those simple married moments that feels comfortable and exciting at the same time. She started gently pulling me away from the sink, guiding me toward the bedroom. Before I followed her, I turned back to switch off the bathroom light. That was when I glanced at the mirror again. My reflection was screaming. Its mouth was stretched wide open, far wider than my mouth should have been able to open. Its eyes bulged with rage and panic. Its face was twisted into an expression so intense that it did not look human anymore. Its fists were raised, pounding against the inside of the glass again and again, but there was no sound. The bathroom was silent, except for my wife laughing softly from the hallway and telling me to hurry up. The reflection kept beating against the mirror. It looked like it was trapped behind the glass. It looked like it was trying to break through. Its mouth opened and closed in a silent scream, and its eyes were fixed on me with pure hatred. I froze. For 1 second, I could not move at all. Then I closed my eyes and shook my head hard, like I was trying to knock something loose inside my skull. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a weird moment, a flash of imagination. Maybe I had stood up too fast. Maybe blood was not exactly flowing to my brain in that moment. When I opened my eyes again, the reflection was normal. It was just me. My own confused face stared back from the mirror. My wife called my name again, and I forced myself to laugh. I turned off the light and closed the bathroom door. That should have been the end of it. The next morning, I nearly died trying to shave. I shaved the old-fashioned way. I know most people think that is strange now, but I like the routine. I fill the sink with hot water, almost too hot to touch. I use a brush and shaving cream, and I shave with a straight razor. It makes me feel focused, careful, like I am starting the day with control. That morning, my face still felt a little dry from the night before, but nothing seemed unusual. I brushed the cream over my cheeks and jaw, then shaved slowly. I was careful around my neck, careful under my chin. I remember feeling calm, maybe even a little silly for what I thought I had seen the night before. When I finished shaving, I leaned down to rinse my face in the hot water. Suddenly, my head slammed into the sink. It happened so fast that I did not even have time to shout. 1 second, I was leaning forward on my own, and the next, something forced me down with brutal strength. My face plunged into the scalding water. Heat flooded my skin. It rushed into my eyes and nose. Pain exploded across my face. I tried to jerk backward, but I could not move. Something was holding me there. My forehead hit the porcelain. The back of my head smashed against the underside of the faucet. Water filled my mouth. I tried to scream, but it came out as bubbles and panic. My lungs tightened. My hands clawed blindly at the edge of the sink, then slipped on the wet porcelain. I could feel my body fighting. My legs kicked. My shoulders twisted. My fingers scraped the inside of the sink. The hot water burned my eyelids, my cheeks, my lips. The pain was so sharp that it became almost white in my head. I thought I was going to drown in my own bathroom sink. Then my fingers found the drain stopper. I grabbed it and yanked as hard as I could. The water began to drain. For a few terrible seconds, my face was still pressed down as the water lowered around me. Then whatever force had been holding me vanished. I staggered backward, choking and gasping for air. I hit the wall and slid halfway down it. My face felt like it was on fire. My eyes watered so badly I could barely see. I coughed and spat water onto the floor, my whole body shaking. The mirror above the sink was fogged from the steam. Through the haze, I saw my reflection. It was smirking, not smiling, smirking like it knew exactly what had happened. Like it had enjoyed watching me almost die. I blinked hard through the burning in my eyes. I turned on the cold faucet and splashed water over my face again and again. It hurt, but I needed the heat off my skin. When I finally looked up at the mirror again, the smirk was gone. It was just me. Red-faced, shaking, burned, terrified, I told myself it had been my imagination. I told myself the faucet had slipped, or I had leaned too far, or maybe I had fainted for a second. I told myself anything that sounded more normal than the truth. But I did not believe it. Not really. Later that afternoon, I decided to prove it. My wife was out running errands, so I locked myself in the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror. I had no plan. I only knew I needed to see if it would happen again. My face still burned from the hot water. Red patches had formed across my cheeks and forehead, and small blisters were starting near one eye. I looked terrible. The reflection looked back at me. Right away, I knew it was not me. It wore my face, yes, it moved when I moved at first, but the expression was wrong. It looked furious. It looked like someone who had been trapped too long and blamed me for it. And its face was not burned. That detail made my blood go cold. My face was red and blistered. The skin around my eyes was swollen. But the face in the mirror was clear. Smooth, unhurt, I lifted one hand slowly. The reflection lifted its hand, too. Then it raised its middle finger. I froze. For a few seconds, I just stood there, staring at the impossible insult coming from my own reflection. Then its mouth started moving. It looked like it was shouting, its face twisted in anger, lips pulling back, teeth showing. It jabbed a finger at me, then at itself, then at the mirror, like it was trying to tell me something. But I could not hear a word, only silence. Something about that made me angry. Maybe it was fear turning into anger because anger was easier to handle. Maybe it was my pride. Maybe I could not accept being threatened by something wearing my face. So, in typical angry me fashion, I flipped it off right back. That was a mistake. The reflection's face filled with rage. It lunged toward the glass and slammed both fists against the inside of the mirror. Crack. A spiderweb of fractures shot across the glass. At the exact same moment, pain burst through my hand. I looked down. My right hand was balled into a tight fist, and blood was dripping from my knuckles onto the sink. I had not punched anything. I knew I had not, but my hand looked like I had slammed it into the mirror myself. When I looked back up, there was a bloody smear across the cracked glass. The thing behind the mirror held up its hands. They were clean. No blood, no cuts, no pain. It smiled at me. I do not remember deciding to take the mirror down. I only remember running to the garage for tools. My heart was pounding so hard that I could feel it in my throat. I grabbed a screwdriver, a wrench, anything I thought I might need, and hurried back to the bathroom. When I returned, the reflection looked afraid. That scared me almost more than its anger had. It pressed its face against the inside of the glass, eyes wide, mouth moving fast. It slammed its palms against the mirror. It shook its head. It looked like it was begging, or warning me, or both. I did not care. I started unscrewing the mounting bolts. The thing in the mirror became frantic. It hammered against the glass harder and harder. New cracks appeared. Small lines ran outward from the broken places. It looked like it might shatter before I even got it off the wall. My hands shook, but I kept working. One bolt came loose, then another. The reflection screamed silently at me, its face twisted in terror. For one brief second, it looked so much like me that I almost stopped. It looked like a man trapped somewhere dark, trying to get out. Then I remembered the sink, the burning water, the smirk. I removed the last bolt. The mirror came free from the wall. The reflection was still there inside it, still moving, still screaming with no sound. I carried it through the house, trying not to look directly at it. It shook and pounded in my hands like the thing inside had weight, like it was trapped in a box instead of a flat sheet of glass. I took it outside and threw it into the dumpster. The mirror shattered. Glass exploded against the metal bottom. For a second, I thought I saw movement in the broken pieces. A flash of a hand, a piece of my face, an eye staring up from a shard. Then, everything went still. After that, we went without a bathroom mirror for a few days. My wife hated it. At first, she only complained a little. She said it was annoying to brush her hair without a mirror. She asked why I had taken it down so suddenly. I told her it had cracked, and I did not want it falling off the wall. That was partly true, but not the truth she needed. She asked how it cracked. I said I did not know. She did not believe me. I could tell. But she let it go. For a few days, I started to feel almost normal again. The bathroom looked strange without the mirror. Just a blank rectangle on the wall where it used to hang. But I preferred that. I avoided reflective surfaces anyway. I stopped looking too long at dark windows. I turned my phone screen away when it went black. I did not want to see my face staring back at me. Eventually, my wife convinced me to install a new mirror. She said we could not live like that forever. She said I was acting weird. She said whatever happened with the old mirror, it was over now. She even joked that if I was going to keep losing weight, I needed somewhere to admire myself. I forced a laugh. 2 days ago, I installed the new mirror. It was simple, clean, nothing special. I bought it from the hardware store, still wrapped in cardboard. I checked it before I hung it, even though I did not know what I was checking for. It looked like a normal mirror. For the first day, I avoided it. Then, this morning, after my workout, I found myself standing in front of it. I did not even mean to. I was sweaty, breathing hard, and still tired from exercising. I had gone into the bathroom to wash my face, and there I was again, looking at my body in the mirror, just like I had when all of this started. 30 pounds gone, muscles starting to show, shoulders broader, stomach smaller. But this time, I did not feel proud. My face still carried the burns from the sink. They had started healing, but the skin was red and angry. There was a scab near my eyebrow. My eyes looked tired. More than anything, I looked disappointed. Disappointed in myself, in the fear, in how badly I wanted everything to go back to normal. Then my wife walked into the bathroom behind me. I saw her reflection before I felt her touch. She smiled in the mirror and slid her arms around my waist, just like she had before. Her hands moved over my stomach. Her lips brushed against my neck. For 1 second, I let myself relax. I smiled. Then, something felt wrong. Her hands felt too light. Her breath did not touch my skin. The kiss on my neck was there in the mirror, but I did not feel it on my body. I turned around. The bathroom was empty. My wife was not there. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might be sick. Slowly, I turned back to the mirror. Inside it, my wife was still behind me. Her arms were around my reflection. Her lips were on his neck. She looked happy, real, warm, completely unaware that anything was wrong. My reflection looked at me. Then it smiled, not with panic, not with fear, not with anger, with victory. The two of them began walking toward the bedroom inside the mirror. I screamed. I slammed my fists against the glass. I shouted my wife's name. I told her to stop. I told her to turn around. I told her that was not me. I told her I was here, on the other side, standing in the real bathroom. She did not hear me. Or maybe she could not. My reflection kept one arm around her as they walked away. Then, just before they disappeared from view, it reached back toward the bathroom door. Toward my side. Toward the world I was trapped in. Its hand moved where my hand should have been. The bathroom light clicked off. The door closed. And I was left standing alone in the dark, staring into glass that no longer showed my wife at all. Story 4. I have always loved hiking. Not the easy kind where people walk for an hour, take a picture at a pretty spot, and then drive home before dinner. I mean the kind where you disappear into the mountains for days at a time. The kind where your phone has no signal, your legs hurt by the second morning, and everything you need is carried on your back. Food, water, spare clothes, sleeping bag, flashlight, knife, rain cover, all of it. Some people find that exhausting. I find it peaceful. There is a strange freedom in leaving normal life behind for a while. No cars, no buildings, no messages, no work, just trails, trees, rocks, sky, and the sound of your own breathing while you climb higher and higher. When you are deep enough in the forest, the world becomes simple. You walk, you eat, you find water, you keep warm, you sleep, then you wake up and do it again. But simple does not mean safe. The mountains in my country can be dangerous if you are careless. Weather changes quickly. A warm morning can become a cold storm before afternoon. Rocks can slide under your feet. Trails can disappear under leaves or snow. Wild animals are always a possibility, even if you do not see them often. And people can be dangerous, too. There are lonely places in the hills where you do not want to meet the wrong stranger, especially at night. Because of that, my friends and I always had rules. We stayed together. We carried enough supplies. We marked our route. We avoided drinking too much when we were far from help. And when it came time to sleep, we never picked a place without thinking it through. Sometimes, if we were lucky, we could sleep in small mountain cabins. There are many of them hidden along trails, built for hikers, hunters, or forest workers. Some are nothing more than wooden boxes with a roof, a table, and a place to roll out sleeping mats. Others are a little better, with a small stove and a door that can be locked from the inside. Those were always the best. A lock does not make you completely safe, but when you are tired and surrounded by forest, even a thin wooden door can feel like a blessing. When we could not find a cabin, we had another option. Overlook towers. The mountains are full of them. They are usually built on clear high points where people can climb up and see the valley below. Most are simple wooden structures, maybe 2 or 3 floors tall, with narrow platforms and steep stairs. Tourists climb them during the day, take photos, and leave. At night, they are usually empty. We learned early that they were good places to sleep. Not comfortable, exactly. The floor is hard, and the wind can be brutal if the tower is exposed. But they have one big advantage. The stairs are steep and awkward. A healthy person can climb them without much trouble, but animals usually do not try. Dogs might hesitate. Wild boars do not even attempt it. Bears, at least in our experience, stay away. And a person coming up those stairs would make enough noise to wake everyone. So on longer hikes, if we found an overlooked tower near sunset, we often used it as our camp. That night, we found one at the top of a mountain. It had been a long day. We had started early, while mist was still hanging between the trees, and spent hours climbing through thick forest and rocky paths. By late afternoon, everyone was tired. Our shoulders hurt from the weight of our bags, and nobody was talking much anymore. The trail became steeper near the end, and more than once I wondered if we should have stopped earlier. Then we reached the clearing. It opened suddenly, like the forest had stepped aside. The top of the mountain was flat enough to camp on, with grass, dirt, and patches of stone. On one side, the land dropped away into a wide valley. Far below, there was a city. It was not close enough to hear clearly, but we could see it perfectly. As evening settled in, the lights began to glow one by one, spreading across the valley like fallen stars. The view was beautiful. Even the tired people in our group stopped complaining. The camping spot itself was simple. There was a fireplace made from a ring of stones, a small wooden shelter with only a roof and no walls, and the 3-story overlooked tower standing a little to the side. One trail came up from the mountain, the same path we had used. Another smaller path split away near the clearing and went down the other side into darker trees. The tower was nothing special to look at. Old wood, steep stairs, railings around each platform, a roof at the top. But to us, it looked safe enough. We decided to sleep there. We cooked dinner over the fire while the last light faded from the sky. Nothing fancy. Dry food, bread, sausage, tea, a little chocolate we shared while sitting on logs around the fire. Everyone was in a good mood again because that is what food does after a hard hike. For a while, the whole day felt worth it. We talked quietly, laughed a little, pointed out lights in the city below. Someone said they could see the road winding through the valley. Someone else argued it was a river. I remember leaning back on my hands and looking up at the tower, thinking it would be a cold but decent place to sleep. By around 10, we were done. We poured water over the fire until the last orange glow died. We checked the ashes carefully because nobody in our group was stupid enough to leave fire alive in the mountains. Then, one by one, we carried our things up the stairs to the top platform. The stairs creaked under our weight, but not in a worrying way. Just old wood complaining like old wood does. The top platform had enough space for all of us if we placed our sleeping mats close together. We arranged them with our bags near our heads and boots lined up by the wall. I placed my sleeping bag near the side, where the railing opened toward the valley, because I wanted to wake up with a good view of the sunrise. Most of my friends fell asleep quickly. That is what happens after a whole day of walking with heavy packs. The moment your body feels horizontal, it shuts down. Within minutes, I could hear deep breathing around me. One friend snored softly. Another turned over twice, muttered something, and went still. I was tired, but not sleepy yet. Sometimes that happens to me in the mountains. My body is exhausted, but my mind stays awake because the place is too beautiful to leave. So I stood near the railing for a while, wrapped in my jacket, looking out over the valley. The city lights below made the darkness feel even deeper around us. The sky above was clear, filled with stars. In the city, you never see the sky like that. Up there, the stars seemed close enough to touch. The forest stretched in every direction, black and thick, with the mountain dropping into it like a sleeping giant. I stayed there for almost an hour. Around 11:15, I finally decided to sleep. I crawled into my sleeping bag and zipped it up to my chest. The floor beneath my mat was hard, but I had slept in worse places. I turned on my side, facing the valley, and let my eyes rest on the distant lights. At night, the forest has a sound. Anyone who spends time there knows it. It is not silence. True silence in the forest is rare, and when it happens, it feels wrong. Usually there are crickets, owls, small animals moving through leaves, wind brushing through branches. Sometimes a dog barking far away from some village or farm. Sometimes a strange, steady white noise that comes from wind moving across the hills, or maybe from roads far below. It all blends together into a kind of living background. That sound helps me sleep. It tells me the world is normal. I was just starting to drift off when I noticed it had stopped. Not all at once. At least I do not think so. It was more like my mind slowly realized something was missing. The crickets were gone. The small rustles had faded. No owl called. No distant dog barked. The forest, which had been breathing around us, suddenly seemed to be holding its breath. Only the wind remained. I opened my eyes. For a few seconds, I lay still in my sleeping bag, listening. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the temperature had dropped. Maybe the insects had gone quiet for some normal reason. Maybe I had been half asleep and only imagined the change. Forests are strange at night, and tired minds make them stranger. But curiosity got the better of me. Slowly, trying not to wake the others, I pushed myself up on one elbow and looked through the railing. At first, I saw only darkness. Then I noticed movement at the edge of the clearing. It was near the path we had used to come up the mountain. A dark shape stood between the trees where the trail entered the open ground. I could not make out details. It was just a shadow among shadows. But it was moving, and it was coming toward us. My first thought was that it might be a person, maybe another hiker arriving late, maybe someone from a nearby village, maybe a drunk man wandering through the woods. That would have been bad enough, but at least understandable. My second thought was an animal, a deer maybe, or a wild boar, something large enough to make the forest go quiet. I was about to whisper to the others and wake them, because you do not ignore movement in the dark when you are sleeping outdoors. Then the shape came closer to the shelter near the tower, and I realized how tall it was. Too tall. The shelter had no walls, only posts and a sloping roof. The highest point of that roof was over 3 meters, maybe a little more. The thing walking in the clearing was almost as tall as that. For a moment, my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. It moved on 2 legs, but not like a person. There was something wrong with its legs. They did not bend properly. It was as if the knees were stiff or locked, and the whole body had to jerk forward with each step. The movement was violent, not smooth. Each step looked forced, like the creature was using a body that was not built for walking, but had learned the idea badly. Its upper body was narrow and long. I could not see its face. I could not even tell if it had one. It was just a tall, dark shape moving through the clearing with painful, broken effort. I froze. Every part of me wanted to scream. But another part, deeper and older, told me not to move at all. If it saw me, I thought, something terrible would happen. I do not know why I believed that so strongly. Maybe it was the silence in the forest. Maybe it was the size of it. Maybe it was the way it moved, like a thing that should not exist here or anywhere. But the thought was clear in my head. Do not let it notice you. Very slowly, I shifted backward. I moved away from the railing, inch by inch, keeping my body low. My sleeping bag made the smallest sound against the wooden floor, and even that seemed too loud. I held my breath. My friends slept around me, completely unaware. One of them snored again, and I almost panicked at the sound. I wanted to wake them. I wanted all of us to be ready. But how could I do that without making noise? And what would we do if they woke up scared and shouted? We were trapped at the top of a tower with one way down. If that thing decided to climb, we would have nowhere to run. So I lay there in the dark, away from the edge, and listened. That was worse than looking. When you cannot see something, your ears start building it for you. The adrenaline in my body made every sound sharp, too sharp. I heard each step it took in the clearing, the compression of dirt under its feet, the crack of small sticks, the soft scrape of displaced stones rolling into new places. Every sound seemed to happen right beside my head, even though it was below us. It moved slowly. Heavy. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. The tower felt suddenly fragile. The wooden boards under my body no longer seemed like protection. They were just old planks, nailed together, holding us above the ground like meat on a shelf. I stared into the darkness above me and waited for the sound I feared most. The stairs. If that thing touched the wooden stairs, I knew I would hear it. The first step would creak, then the next, then the next. The sound would rise toward us in the dark, and we would have only seconds to wake grab our knives, flashlights, anything, I imagined its stiff legs jerking up the steps. I imagined long hands curling around the railing. I imagined a head appearing above the platform, turning slowly toward our sleeping bags. I gripped the edge of my mat so hard my fingers hurt. The footsteps below stopped. That was worse. For a few seconds, there was no sound except the wind. I thought it was standing at the bottom of the tower. I thought it was looking up. I thought it could smell us. My heartbeat was so loud in my ears that I was sure it would hear. I wanted to press my hands over my chest to muffle it. My mouth was dry. My legs were stiff. I did not even blink. Nothing happened. The stairs did not creak. No wood groaned under its weight. No hand touched the railing. Then the footsteps began again. But this time, they moved away, slowly at first. Then a little farther. Each step became softer. The forest sounds began to return, not all at once, but carefully, like the woods were testing whether it was safe to breathe again. A cricket started somewhere far off. Then another. Leaves whispered. The normal night slowly settled back into place. I waited a long time before I dared to move. When I finally gathered enough courage, I lifted my head and looked through the railing again. The shape was on the smaller path now, the one that led down the other side of the mountain. It moved with the same broken, stiff jerks, heading away from the clearing and into the conifer woods. The trees swallowed it piece by piece until only its upper body remained visible. Then that disappeared too. I kept staring at the place where it had gone. I do not know how long I stayed like that. The rest of the night was endless. I did not sleep at all, not even for a few minutes. I lay inside my sleeping bag with my eyes open, listening for the return of those heavy steps. Every time the wind moved through the tower, I thought the stairs were creaking. Every time a branch cracked in the distance, my body went cold. I watched the dark spaces between the trees until my eyes hurt. My friends slept through everything. Once, one of them rolled over and bumped my leg. I almost screamed. Near dawn, the sky began to lighten. The black forest turned gray. The valley appeared again below us, the city lights fading as morning came. Birds started calling. The world looked normal in a way that felt insulting. When the others woke up, they complained about the cold and the hard floor. One asked why I looked so bad. I said I had not slept well. That was true enough. For a few minutes, I almost convinced myself I had dreamed it. That is what the mind wants to do in daylight. It takes the impossible thing from the night and tries to fold it into something normal. A dream, a shadow, a tree moving in the wind, a tired brain mixing shapes together. I had walked all day. I had been exhausted. Maybe I had half woken from a nightmare and seen darkness moving where there was nothing. I wanted to believe that. Then I smelled it. At first, I thought one of our food bags had gone bad. Then the smell grew stronger as we climbed down from the tower. The whole campsite reeked. It was a sickly, sweet smell, thick and rotten, like meat left in the sun too long. Like something dead hidden nearby. Not fresh, but not old enough to stop smelling. It clung to the shelter, the fireplace, the dirt near the path. It had not been there the evening before. I was certain of that. We had sat around the fire for hours. We would have noticed. Now it was everywhere. One of my friends covered his nose. Another cursed and asked if an animal had died nearby. Someone suggested maybe garbage had been left under the shelter, but nobody wanted to check carefully. We had planned to make breakfast there, but that idea disappeared quickly. Nobody had an appetite. I kept looking at the ground near the path. I expected footprints, but the dirt was too hard and mixed with stones. There were disturbed places, but nothing clear enough to prove anything. No giant tracks, no broken railing, no mark on the stairs. Only the smell, that rotten sweetness. It felt like the creature had left part of itself in the air. We packed faster than usual. I said very little. My hands shook while I rolled up my sleeping mat. I avoided looking toward the smaller path that went down the mountain, the one the thing had taken. Every time my eyes drifted in that direction, I imagined it still there, just beyond the first row of trees, standing stiff and tall, waiting for us to notice it in daylight. We skipped breakfast and left. As we walked back onto the trail, I did not look behind me. Not once. I never told my friends what I saw. I wanted to. Many times, I almost did. On the way down the mountain, when everyone was joking about the awful smell, I nearly said, "I saw something last night." Later, at home, when we shared pictures from the hike, I almost typed it into our group chat. But I knew how it would sound. They would think I was tired. They would think I had seen a tree shadow. They would laugh. Not cruelly, but in that way people laugh when they want to protect themselves from believing you. And if they did believe me, that might be worse, because then the thing would become real for them too. So I kept it to myself, but I could not forget it. For weeks afterward, I searched for answers. I looked through local folklore, mountain legends, old stories from villages, reports of strange creatures in Central European forests, tall spirits, forest demons, giants, things that walk at night, things that smell like death. I found plenty of stories, of course. Every place has stories. But none of them matched what I saw. Nothing about the stiff legs, nothing about the silence, nothing about the terrible smell appearing after it passed. I searched in different languages. I asked indirect questions in hiking forums. I read old accounts in strange blogs and collections of local myths. Still, nothing fit. Years have passed, and I still hike. Maybe that sounds foolish. Maybe it is. But the mountains were part of my life before that night, and I refuse to give them up completely. Still, I do not sleep on overlooked towers as easily as I used to. I do not trust clearings at the top of mountains. I do not sleep near paths that split into dark woods. And when the forest goes quiet at night, truly quiet, I do not tell myself it is normal anymore. I sit up. I listen. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I think I smell something sweet and rotten moving through the trees. I still do not know what kind of creature I saw that night. I only know it was real. And I know that for whatever reason, it passed us by. Story 5. When I was 25 years old, I decided I had finally had enough of people. That sounds dramatic now, but at the time, it felt like the most honest thought I had ever had. I was tired of noise, tired of traffic, tired of neighbors, phone calls, bills, strangers, arguments, and all the small things that come with living around other human beings. I did not hate people, exactly. I just felt worn down by them. Every conversation felt like work. Every street felt too crowded. Every day felt like something was pressing against my skull from the inside. So when I got my inheritance money, I did what most people in my life thought was insane. I packed everything I owned, bought a small cabin in Montana, and moved out there by myself. What I wanted was silence. And for a long time, that was exactly what I got. The cabin was far from any town. Not completely unreachable, but far enough that nobody came by unless they meant to. It sat among thick woods, with mountains rising in the distance, and long open stretches where the deer and elk moved like shadows in the early morning. There was a dirt road that led to the place, but in bad weather it became more mud than road, and during winter it could be a real problem if you did not prepare ahead of time. That suited me just fine. I wanted to be left alone, and the world seemed willing to grant that wish. The first few months were difficult, of course. A person raised around stores, warm houses, and easy food learns very quickly that nature does not care how peaceful you think it looks. The woods were beautiful, but they were not kind. If I wanted heat, I had to cut wood. If I wanted food, I had to grow it, store it, or hunt it. If I got careless with tools, I would bleed. If I got careless with weather, I could freeze. If I got careless with animals, I might not come back at all. But I was young and strong then, and stubborn enough to make it work. I learned the land little by little. I learned which slopes stayed icy longest. I learned where the ground turned soft after rain. I learned where berries grew and which ones to avoid. I learned how to keep my garden alive, how to store vegetables, how to salt meat, and how to make a small fire last through a long night. I also read. I have always loved books, and out there I finally had the time for them. I read everything I could get my hands on. The Catcher in the Rye, 1984, Moby Dick, Crime and Punishment, old westerns, history books, battered paperbacks I found in secondhand stores, anything. When I went into town, I always came back with food, ammunition, medicine, clothes if I needed them, and a few more books. Those trips into town happened only a few times a month. I never enjoyed them, but they were necessary. I would drive in, buy what I needed, speak as little as possible, and return to the cabin before dark if I could. The moment the trees closed around the road again, I always felt my body loosen. It felt like crossing back into my real life. For years, I thought I had found paradise. A hard paradise, but paradise all the same. The days had shape. The seasons mattered. Spring was planting. Summer was tending. Fall was storing, hunting, and preparing. Winter was survival, reading, firewood, and the long, deep quiet that most people fear, but I had come to love. Then came the fall of 1989. That was when everything changed. By that time, I had lived at the cabin long enough to know what I needed before winter. My garden had done well that year. I had potatoes, carrots, onions, squash, beans, and jars of fruit stacked away. My shed was full of cut lumber and firewood. I had repaired part of the roof in late summer, and the cellar was clean and dry. The only thing I was a little short on was meat. Usually, a couple of elk were enough to get me through the winter if I prepared them properly. I had already taken one earlier that season, but I wanted another before the cold set in fully. Out there, you do not gamble with hunger. Maybe the winter would be mild. Maybe it would not. Maybe my stores would last easily. Maybe I would lose some to spoilage or animals or plain bad luck. There is no such thing as being too careful when you live alone in the wilderness. So one morning, just after dawn, I strapped my rifle over my shoulder and left the cabin. The air was cold enough to sting my nose when I breathed in. Frost clung to the grass and the fallen leaves. The sky was pale, and the sun had not yet risen high enough to warm anything. I moved quietly through the trees, careful with my footing, listening to the small sounds of the woods waking up around me. The animals in that area did not see people very often, so they were not as skittish as animals near towns. That did not mean they were stupid. You still had to move carefully, stay downwind, and pay attention. Elk especially could vanish into the trees as if they had never been there. I hiked up to a ridge not far from the cabin. From there, I could look down into a valley where elk sometimes grazed in small groups. It was a good place to watch, and I had been lucky there before. When I reached the top, I crouched low behind some rocks and took out my rifle. I looked through the scope and slowly scanned the open land below. For a while, I saw nothing but dry grass, scattered trees, and the faint movement of wind across the valley. Then, something moved at the edge of my view. At first, I thought it might be an elk, but when I adjusted the scope, I saw a bobcat crouched over the carcass of a mule deer. It was tearing into the meat, too busy eating to notice me. A strong, pretty animal. Lucky, too. It had found itself a good meal. I watched it for a minute, then sighed. The bobcat had probably scared off anything else in the area. No elk was going to wander close while that cat was feeding. I lowered the rifle, packed up, and decided to head south toward a watering hole I knew. It was not an easy walk. The land rose and fell sharply in places, and parts of the trail were covered in loose stone. But I was strong back then, stronger than I am now, and I knew the route. It took me 3 or 4 hours to reach the area near the water. By then, the day was already moving toward evening. The fall days were getting short, and I knew I did not have much daylight left. Maybe a couple of hours if I was lucky. I found a place far enough from the watering hole that I would not be noticed, but close enough for a clean shot. Then I settled in to wait. Waiting is part of hunting. People who have never done it think hunting is mostly walking and shooting. It is not. It is waiting, watching, listening, holding yourself still until your knees ache and your fingers go numb. The forest rewards patience more than excitement. I pulled out my copy of Crime and Punishment to pass the time. I read less than 20 pages before I heard a rustle in the brush. I closed the book slowly and set it aside. The sound came again. I raised my rifle and followed the movement through the trees. A few seconds later, 2 elk stepped out of the greenery and moved toward the pond. One was too small to be worth taking. The other was a good size, broad and healthy, exactly what I needed. I switched off the safety and sat as still as stone, barely breathing. The larger elk lowered its head toward the water. I fired. The shot cracked through the valley. The bullet went clean through its lungs. The elk stumbled forward 3 steps, then collapsed in a heavy heap near the edge of the water. The smaller one bolted into the forest, crashing through brush until the sound faded. I stayed still for a moment, watching the downed elk to make sure it did not rise again. It did not. When I approached, I realized it was even bigger than I had thought. That should have made me happy. And it did for a while. It meant more meat. It meant a safer winter. It meant the long walk had been worth it. I cleaned it as quickly and carefully as I could. Then I wrapped the meat in the hide and slung the heavy load over my shoulder. It was awkward and heavier than I expected, but I could manage it. I started back toward the cabin. I knew I had to hurry. The sun was already sinking, and walking through the woods with fresh meat on your back is not something you want to do after dark. The smell can draw attention. I had not seen a bear in a couple of years, and I told myself that was a good sign, but I knew better than to trust luck completely. Still, I was not too worried. I knew the land. I had my rifle. I was only a few hours from home. The sun went down when I was about 30 minutes from the cabin. By then, the sky had turned deep blue, and the first stars were showing. The moon was bright enough to help me see, and I was close enough to know the way by memory. The air had grown colder. My breath came out in little clouds, and every step made the weight on my back feel worse. I was breathing hard. The elk had been bigger than I thought, much bigger. Through the trees, I could see the faint smoke from my fireplace rising against the night sky. I had banked the fire before leaving that morning, and knowing it was still there made me feel relieved. Home was close. Warmth was close. Food, books, my bed, and four walls were close. The stars were beautiful that night. They always were out there. Without city lights, the sky looked endless. Sometimes I loved that. Sometimes it made me feel smaller than I wanted to feel. Small and alone, standing in the dark with miles of trees on every side. That was when I heard a twig snap behind me. I turned fast, almost losing my balance under the weight of the meat. My first thought was bear. I lifted the rifle as much as I could with the load still on my shoulder. My heart began beating hard, and I searched the darkness between the trees. It was not a bear. It was an elk. At least, that was what I thought at first. It stood maybe 20 or 30 yards away, partly hidden by the trees. I could see its long face, its ears, the shape of its body. The moonlight caught its eyes, making them shine faintly. Elk did not usually come that close to my cabin. They avoided the smoke, the smell of people, the small signs of human life. But it was dark, and maybe this one had wandered too close by mistake. Maybe it had been separated from the others. Maybe it smelled the meat I was carrying and did not understand what it meant. I watched it for a moment. There was something almost accusing about the way it stood there. I remember thinking, stupidly, that maybe it knew I had one of its own kind on my back. Then its nose twitched, not like an elk, like a rabbit. Fast, small, wrong, I frowned. The elk turned its head and looked directly at me. Then it stood up on its hind legs, not reared up for a second like an animal startled by danger, not lifting its front legs and dropping back down. It stood, it balanced. Its front legs hung in front of its chest, bent in an unnatural way. Then it walked away on two legs. I could not move. In all my years out there, I had never seen any animal do anything like that. Its body was not made for it, and yet it moved with purpose, slowly, awkwardly, but purposefully. It stepped between the trees and disappeared into the dark. A cold feeling crawled up my spine. For several seconds, I simply stood there, listening. Nothing no crash through the brush. No normal four-legged movement. No frightened animal running away. Just the woods. I told myself it was a strange coincidence. A sick animal. A trick of moonlight. Maybe it had reared up against a tree and my tired mind had shaped the rest. Maybe the weight on my back and the long day had gotten to me. That explanation did not satisfy me, but it was the only one I had. So I kept walking. I reached the cabin without seeing anything else. Once inside, I bolted the door and started working on the meat. I packed it in salt and stored it carefully in the cellar. The work took time, and by the end of it, my arms were shaking from exhaustion. When I came back upstairs, the cabin felt warm and safe. The fire glowed low in the stove. The familiar smell of wood smoke filled the room. My books sat on the shelf. My lantern burned on the table. I was tired enough to fall asleep standing. Still, I read a few more chapters of Crime and Punishment before bed. That was part of my routine. Reading helped separate one day from the next. It made the cabin feel less empty. Eventually, I blew out the lantern and fell asleep. When I woke up, it was still dark. For a moment, I did not know why I was awake. The cabin was quiet. The fire had burned low. My body ached from the hunt. Outside, rain tapped against the roof, soft but steady. I lit a candle and got up. Once I was awake, I knew I would not fall back asleep easily. Rain always did that to me. It was not heavy, but there was thunder in the distance, low and slow, which meant the weather might be worse by morning. I went to the stove and decided to cook some old grouse I had been meaning to finish. There was plenty of elk now, but I did not like wasting food. I moved around the cabin quietly, candlelight shifting over the walls, and tried not to think about the elk I had seen standing on two legs. But of course, I thought about it. How could I not? How did it stand like that? What kind of animal does that? The grouse was cooking nicely when I heard a tap on the window. I froze. It was a small sound, not loud, just a light tap against the glass. I stood still and listened. Tap, my first thought was a branch. There were trees close to the cabin, and with the wind picking up, it was not strange for a branch to scrape or knock against the window. Still, the sound scared me badly enough that I grabbed the candle and walked over to look. My hand shook slightly as I held the flame near the glass. I almost laughed when I saw what it was. A tree branch was blowing in the wind, tapping and scraping against the window. Rain ran down the glass in thin lines. Beyond it, the woods were dark and wet. I let out a long breath. Just a branch. I was on edge from what I had seen earlier, that was all. My mind was making threats out of ordinary things. I returned to the stove. When the grouse was finished, I sat down at the small table to eat. The cabin was warm. The rain continued outside. The thunder stayed far away. I told myself the night would pass like any other strange night in the woods. I had the meat halfway to my mouth when the bedroom window shattered. The sound was explosive in the small cabin. Glass burst inward, scattering across the floor and bed. Cold wind rushed through the empty frame, carrying rain with it. My candle flame nearly went out. I dropped the fork and jumped to my feet. Then came the scream. I have heard animals scream before. Foxes, mountain lions, wounded deer, rabbits caught by predators. The wilderness has plenty of awful sounds if you live in it long enough. This was worse. It was deep and high at the same time, a bellow twisted into something almost human. It filled the cabin and shook through my bones. It was rage, pain, hunger, and something else I could not name. I looked toward the broken window. The same elk was standing outside. On its hind legs,